Welcome everyone to episode 41 of the Phoenix Report. I am Jack Connor, and this is a really very exciting episode for me because this guy is someone whose career I've kind of followed from the beginning. In the early 2000s, my guest today was the lead singer of a band called Stereomud. And I was, just to give you a little background on myself, I was in high school from 99 through 2003. So needless to say, in the early 2000s, I was definitely in tune with what was going on in rock music at the time. I was certainly paying a lot of attention to what was being played on the radio. And Stereomud was a band that definitely had a little bit of a success, and they were certainly an up-and-coming band. They were building a lot of momentum. Their biggest lead single was a song called Pain, and they followed it up with a song called Steppin' Away, and both of those songs I was a really big fan of when I was in high school, and still listen to this day, obviously. Stereomud was originally from, I believe, the Atlanta area, formed in 1999 and released two albums, Perfect Self in 2001 and Every Given Moment in 2003. Since then, they kind of split up, had a relatively short run, but their lead singer, who is my guest today, has also done a lot of other stuff. He's been with a band called Soundevice and also went on to front a band called Dangerous New Machine that, if you listen to the episode I did with Billy Gray, who was the guitarist for that band, I kind of outlined my involvement with them in 2009 at a gig they had in St. Petersburg, Florida at the State Theater. I was lucky enough to share the stage with these guys, and I was really excited to track down their lead singer, who was a guy like I said, I knew from Stereomud. I was a fan of his for years, and I'm really excited to have him on the show and listen to what he has going on now. So please welcome to the Phoenix Report, Erik Rogers.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's that's a long history, isn't it? Wow, it's
for sure, man.
99.
Yeah. And I know you formed that band with Corey Lowry, formerly of Stuck Mojo, who later went on to be in I Empire, and I believe is currently in Saint Asonia with Adam Gontier and Mike Mushak.
Yep, he is. He had several projects after. He had Dark New Day and I Empire, and now Saint Asonia. We've all gone on. I think, early on we kind of all established that, music was part of who we were. So whether we were playing together or we were playing in different bands, we were always all very supportive of each other. I'm proud of Billy and the success that the new Fozzy record has had, and all the success that Judas has had.
Yeah.
And to watch him kind of coming up in that band, and he's been a part of that band for a long time, and it was always kind of a side project for all of them, especially with Jericho's career in wrestling, so it kind of took a back seat because that was his primary, that was his job. Was WWE.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know Billy was involved with Fozzy as early as 2002, but didn't really join the band full time until around 2010. I want to say. Yeah,
it was about the time that that Dangerous New Machine was we'd kind of hit a wall, and we had some personal issues. Our bass player Randy had lost his mother, and at the same time found out that his wife was pregnant.
Oh wow!
So they had a lot going on.
Sure.
So they had an opportunity to move to where they had always wanted to go, which was where they got married, was Kauai, Hawaii. And so that's where they are now.
Oh, wow.
Stay in touch with him, and he's doing well, and he's branched out into, I don't think he's playing music as much now as he's got several businesses open over in Hawaii, and his wife is doing very well, and their daughter.
Very cool.
So, we're all still friends. It's interesting to watch where our paths take us. I grew up in Atlanta, and actually, Stereomud, we formed in Atlanta. Corey and I were out of Atlanta, but the rest of the band was out of New York City. So Corey and I originally moved up to New York. Joey Z had Life of Agony, and the drummer Dan were from Life of Agony, and John Fataruso, our other guitar player, was from the New York area.
Sure.
And so we were up there. We wrote the record, got signed up there, and then hit the road and did that from 2000 through 2004. And it was a great time to get signed. Rock was huge. We were blessed. We were kind of coming in at that end of that that new metal, that hard rock era, and you had so much happen. I never forget, it was September 11th, which was a turning point for our country,
Of course.
the world, everything, and even rock radio took such a hit because so many bands had their singles pulled off the radio because of content, although they had nothing to do with terrorist attacks or anything going on in the world. I remember we were out on tour with Drowning Pool at the time, and Let the Bodies Hit the Floor. Bodies got pulled off the radio. Just because, and the lyrics had nothing. It was a song about being in a mosh pit.
People were just really sensitive at the time. Just thought it was too violent.
Everybody, just hypersensitive, and you also had the rising of social media and the internet really taking off. I remember, when we first launched, you had a website, you had a message board, and that was the end of it. And then you had the MySpace come out, and then later to have Facebook, and now social media has changed the face of music and how it's put out there now, that it made the record labels' job so much harder, because I knew artists that were refusing record deals. They didn't want to sign a record deal because they were going out, they were selling everything digitally, they were making $15,000-$20,000 a month, and they didn't have to pay a label a percentage. So it's been interesting to, I feel very blessed to have been a part of it, where you signed that traditional record deal and you crawled into a tour bus and you hit the road and you stayed on the road, and at the same time now, it's stuff I'm doing now. I've got a project called My Therapy.
Yeah.
That we're just looking at, you release it digitally, you put it out, you have fun, maybe go do a show or two, or 3 or 20 or whatever the case may be. It's crazy because I've reached out to some venues that I played over the years, and they don't even exist now. That they've closed their doors, and it's sad. It's heartbreaking to me, because I feel like youth today are missing out on so much. Like you said, you were in high school when Pain hit the radio, and I mean, that was the thing. You got out, you went to a concert, you bought a T-shirt, you met everybody at a signing.
Absolutely.
MTV was still playing music videos.
I had actually seen Stereomud and Drowning Pool. I definitely don't want to interrupt where you're going here, but I do have a funny story about a concert experience that I was at in 2001 in Tampa. I had gone to see, it was you guys, Stereomud, Drowning Pool, Disturbed, and a few other bands were playing there at the time. It was at
Music is a Weapon.
Yeah, it was at a festival at an event called Guavaween, which happens every year in Tampa, in Ybor City.
I remember it.
Yeah, I was there in the crowd for that, and the funny thing is, I remember about that. I was with a few friends from high school, including this one girl who was a really good friend of mine, and who I definitely had some feelings for at the time. And I remember distinctly being in the crowd and just rocking out with everyone, and kind of hanging out with her at the time. And I remember hearing the words for your song, "Lost Your Faith." It's like, "You've come so far, don't hesitate." And like hearing that back in my and right then and there, I ended up asking her out.
Awesome.
Now, granted, Eric, it didn't quite work out. Nothing really came out of that. We ended up just staying friends. But I thought it was cool because it's like, for some reason, like hearing that song kind of gave me the courage to kind of take that chance. And of course, it all worked out for the best. But I wanted to share that with you. I've been meaning to tell that to you for years. But it's funny how stuff like that intersects, and how you might have impact on people's lives without even realizing it.
Well, and I think that's one of the blessings for anybody who's a songwriter, no matter what the genre, is to have people tell stories like that, and the connection, and whatever that song, whatever that memory's from, and it may have your story and your reaction to a track or song, lyrics, whatever they may be, may have nothing to do with the content of what where the song was written.
Sure.
But at the same time, those are the fun things. I used to always love to leave lyrically. Corey and I would leave things in a way that they were left for the listener to interpret and to apply. We may write it. I remember a song we had on Every Given Moment called "Coming Home."
Yeah.
And when we went in to mix the record, if you listen to the song and you didn't know the backstory on the song, it sounds like a song being sung to like a girlfriend or a wife, you know. And it actually wasn't. It was more about my son, you know, and it was about being on the road and my son growing up and the changes that, you know, your children go through and you're not there. And, you know, he's got baseball games or softball, you know, soccer games and stuff, and you can't go play them because daddy's out working and daddy's job isn't going down the street to a plant or, you know, or a store or selling cars or doing whatever. And, you know, daddy's job is being in a different city every day and playing shows and doing everything and radio interviews and so on and so forth. And, you know, and I remember Jack Joseph Puig, who mixed that record, you know, it kind of blew him away because he had listened to the track and he immediately assumed it was about a girl. And I was like, nope, not about a girl at all. You know, it's actually about a little boy. And he's like, wow, you really left it open for the listener. I said, well, that's the point. You know,
I think
that's what's fun about writing.
Yeah, I think stuff like that is really important because I think a lot of people a lot of lyricists, I want to say, tend to look inward at their own experience and maybe forget that, you know, at a certain point, you do want to keep things a little bit vague because you do want other people to find ways to identify. And I mean, obviously, you want to tell your own story and get your own feelings out. I understand all that, but you know, it is, you know, you do have a little bit. I should say the onus is on you as a songwriter a little bit to make it relatable, that other people can find their own interpretations of it.
It is, and you're absolutely right. It is, you know, and don't get me wrong. There's songs that I've written or been a part of writing that were specific stories, you know, that were, you know, there you can. But again, the listener will take it and apply, you know, their life, their whatever they're going through, you know, and I think that's one of the beauties of music is it's such a universal way of communicating and expressing, you know, and something that I thought, you know, 2 years ago I moved out of Atlanta and I own a home that I bought when I was in Stereomud in North Carolina on the lake, and I said one day I'm going to retire up there. You know, I'm going to be done. I'm going to be old. I'm not going to be doing this anymore, and I'm going to move up. And wound up having an opportunity to take a job with Harrah's Casinos in North Carolina.
Okay.
And it was a great opportunity for me from a job, and I said, you know, I'm going to take this. I'm going to go, and who knows what I'll do. You know, maybe I'll write some songs down the road. Well, through moving up here and meeting a lot of people, I met a drummer who plays drums, piano, violin, cello, guitar, bass. Basically, in an instrument you put in front of this guy, he can play it, and he can play it well. And then we started meeting other people, and it was like, you know what, let's write some songs for fun. And then we named it, and then we started recording it, and then we shot a video for it, you know, and it just kind of grows, and it wasn't the plan, you know.
Right.
I mean, and that's kind of how it happened, you know. When Soundevice started after Stereomud, we weren't sure what was going to happen with Stereomud. You know, the label had kind of decided they weren't going to promote every given moment, which left us kind of high and dry. We didn't know if we were going to stay together, break up.
Right.
Joey had opportunity with Life of Agony to do some reunion shows.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great opportunity for him. And in fact, I flew to New York the first show they did to support him, you know, because I was proud of him.
Yeah.
You know, by all means. You know, that's what we do, play music, whether I'm standing on stage beside you or I'm in the crowd cheering you on. You know, I'm proud of you, and I'm proud to say, you know, I was a part of what we did together. Same thing with Corey, you know. I'm proud of him. No shock that he's producing other artists and doing what he's done, you know, since Stereomud. You know, he's a talented bass player. So, you know,
and a really underrated backup vocalist too.
I never thought he was underrated because he's got a phenomenal voice. He and I love to sing together.
Yeah.
You know, that was the one thing. He and I. That was he forever. I mean, even if you go way back, and I don't know if you ever followed Steel Rain, but when him and his brother and Donnie were singing together, it was some of the best harmonies. You know,
was this
rock music.
Was this earlier on in his career, like before Clint did
Steel
Seven Dust?
Steel Rain was way before Stuck Mojo. It was early on, and kind of their coming of age.
Was this like pre Seven Dust? You know, for Clint.
Pre Seven Dust.
Okay.
Yep.
You know,
or
it
87.
fascinates me, that whole Atlanta scene of that time period. You had bands like Stuck Mojo and Seven Dust, and yourselves obviously come out of that, that area together. I was, lucky enough, 10 years ago, when I was on tour with my first band, to play the Masquerade and see what a huge room that was. And I think, it seems like Atlanta still has, a really big music scene ahead of it, at least from what I can tell. As a
It does. Atlanta's become a small, a New York or Los Angeles. A lot of it's from a hip hop. There's a lot of hip hop coming out of Atlanta,
Right.
a lot of artists. But there's still a lot of other musicians coming out of Atlanta too. The late '80s, early '90s, and even into the early 2000s, there were so many venues. That was what you did, and I remember that you went out on Friday night, and it was hard to pick what venue you were going to go to and what band you were going to go see, and watching the Seven Dust ride, coming up and getting signed and going on, and the Stuck Mojos, and and they weren't selling, these were bands in Atlanta. They were local, they were unsigned, and they were selling out 500, 800 seat venues to local fans, and it was a beautiful time to be a part of music.
Sure, and a lot of that carried over down here in Florida, I should say. I didn't grow up in Florida, but a lot of my friends who did grow up around here would tell me about, like, when they first broke and how they would come down here and do like club shows, and when they were just coming up, and so it's it's not a bad part of the country to be in, I want to say.
No, not at all.
Not
at all.
Yeah. So it's curious what you said about when Stereomud first got together, how you and Corey basically just up and moved to New York City. Did you guys, I know this is after Stuck Mojo, but did you guys have a particular plan in mind? Was there already contact with the other guys, or did you say, I'm just going to go and see what happens?
So how it kind of came about, Corey left Stuck Mojo to go join Life of Agony, but maybe not Life of Agony. He was going to go play with Joey Z and Dan, and they started writing some songs. And actually, the first two songs that they wrote together were "Lost Your Faith" and "Old Man." But they didn't. That wasn't the titles.
Right.
And Corey came back to Atlanta, and I was actually playing in a band with the youngest Lowry brother, Dustin Lowry.
Okay.
He was playing drums. I had a band called Belt Fed, and we had just got off a 6-week tour with Stuck Mojo when Corey left. That was his final, his farewell with Stuck Mojo. And Corey came back and said, "Hey, I'm doing this. We're looking for a singer." And I was like, well, I put my hand up. I said, "Let me audition." And Corey said no at first. He said, "No, you play with my brother. We're not going to do that. I wouldn't take my brother's singer. We're family."
Right.
And Dustin, who was playing drums for me at the time, was like, "Look, I want to front a band. I want to sing. Take Erik. If you take Erik, I can step in and I can be the singer." So I went, and Corey and I got together, and at his house on a home studio started writing "Lost Your Faith" and "Old Man." We sent them to New York, and Joey and Dan came down to Atlanta, and I auditioned in person, and it worked, and it was great. So we packed up, moved to New York, got a rehearsal space, and started writing the first record. And we spent probably almost a year in New York, and then we'd come back to Atlanta periodically and writing, and playing showcases and doing everything until we finally signed the deal, and then the rest was history. The record was recorded, and off we went. And it seemed like it took forever, but yet, in the scheme of things, a year is really not a long time.
Right. Yeah. For most bands, that's a relatively quick turnaround. But again, obviously that particular period of time being different, so much different than what's going on now. It must be crazy when you look back at your career and just seeing all the changes that you've been able to witness firsthand.
Yep, it is. Like I said, it's not a long time. It seemed like a long time at the time, but Joey and Dan had both had Dan had several record deals, because the drummer had been in Propane, and then Crumbsuckers, and then Propane, and then Life of Agony, and then Stereomud. So he was known, and it's a small world. The music scene, even spread out across the United States, is still a small circle.
Yeah.
We're all friends. We all know each other. We played shows together. We've sung on each other's records. We jammed with each other on stage. And that was what was fun. I think that was probably one of the highlights of being on the road was like even Music as a Weapon, the show you saw in Ybor City, getting on stage with Disturbed and doing Stupefy, and getting up with Drowning Pool and doing Bodies, and them, and and Dave coming up on stage with us and doing Lost Your Faith.
That's awesome.
So we were all getting on stage with each other and singing, and we toured with Seven Dust all the time, which was a given because Corey being brothers. So yeah, it was a great time to be a part of it. I've been excited because I don't know if you have XM Sirius radio, but they put out a channel finally that plays like the late 90s, early 2000s rock, and it's called Turbo. And I keep getting people sending me pictures of their radio with Stereomud playing on it and stuff like that. And it's like, there you go. They're playing it again. That's awesome. We've even laughed and joked around about doing a reunion show at some point.
That'd be awesome.
I'm down for it if we ever decide to do it. So
very cool. I mean, I don't have XM myself, but that's cool to know about that particular that particular channel being open. I mean, because I love rock music of all eras, but I mean that one obviously I have a particular personal connection with. Being that the stuff that I grew up listening to, and it's very strange for me as being in my 30s now, like going to festivals like Make America Rock Again and seeing it almost not necessarily be a nostalgia thing, but you see people like Drowning Pool with their current singer and Trapped and all these guys that are out there still doing it. I'm glad to see that there are still venues for these guys, still platforms for these guys to get their music heard.
Well, I think it's just like any you've got every generation had their music, and it's never it may get older, and it does. It ages with the generation, but it doesn't go away, And it is. You're right. It's absolutely exciting to see some of these bands that are coming back out. Proud of my boys in Disturbed. I mean, to take such a hiatus, and take the time off, 2 side projects, Dave's side project, Dan's side project, and then to get back together and to keep it so secret, for such a long time, and come back out and have yet another record debut #1. I mean, that they were such a force to be reckoned with, and so much fun, and yet they're still bringing in new fans.
They are. It's pretty cool to see them still as successful as they have ever been, and. Yeah, I mean, Draymond's one of the best frontmen in the world. I mean, he's incredible, and obviously,
I always thought Dan was one of the baddest guitar players out there, man. I mean, but the whole band. I mean, Mikey. I mean, they were, we had so much fun on that Music as a Weapon tour, and it was such a brotherhood. There was so much camaraderie going on. We had so much fun. We had, there was a lot of laughs. There was a lot of tears when it was over. I mean, it was a good time, and like I said, it was a great time to be a part of music, and it's something that I get to take to the grave with me. Something I was part of.
I don't doubt it. It is really cool to hear about stuff like that, about all the bands getting along and that sort of thing. And I mean, I've heard nothing but good stories about Dave Williams, and
he was an amazing person.
Yeah, I mean, how well did you know him?
We probably all together toured with him for about 6 or 7 months, and it was several different tours. Of course, we had Music as a Weapon with Disturbed, Drowning Pool, Seven Dust, and Stereomud did a run. We did a run with Drowning Pool. There was a number. It seemed like we were picking up on tour together, just kind of back to back to back. And if we weren't on tour together, we were, we had those radio festivals that were going on during the spring and summer months, and we'd all be on them. And it was always, it was kind of like, it's that best friend you don't have to talk to every day, and as soon as you see him again, it's like you never missed a beat, And it was. I'm honored to have known him and been able to share the stage with him, because he was such a talent and wonderful to his fans. He loved his fans. He appreciated, everything that they were giving us. I mean, that was one of the things that always kind of stuck with me too, was we were where we were because of the people that bought the record, bought the tickets, bought the shirts, and kept coming out and spreading the word, and it just, it's a full circle.
Absolutely, and it definitely is a testament to the rest of the guys from Drowning Pool that they managed to carry on despite just one of the worst things that could happen to any band is to lose a member, especially so young like that, and they've still managed to persevere, and they've had a few guys come in and out, but you know, Drowning Pool is still out there getting after it and still putting on great shows.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yeah,
Absolutely.
you know, can't say enough good things about those guys. At the height of Stereomud's success, did you guys do any touring outside of the States, or was it mainly national?
We did not. It was United States and Canada was where we got to. There was talk for us to go to Europe, and it was one of those things where, you know, it's called music business for a reason.
Of course,
and the business side stepped in, and when we came off of Stepping Away for a single, we were up in the air with our management company, with the label, whether or not we were going to push a third single off the record or we were going to go in and write a new record. And despite what the band's opinion was, which I think for the most part we were kind of pushing for that third single, we'd had a lot of, and Back Up was the one we were looking at for being the next single, but the label wasn't really going to put a lot behind it. So we accepted that we were losing that fight, you know, and they were the ones with the checkbook. So we headed to the studio and started writing, you know, and started working on that, you know, every given moment. And, you know, you always wonder what would have happened had we done the next single and we'd have kept touring and we'd gone longer. Would it have been the death of it, or would it have kicked it into high gear? You know, you don't know. I mean, you just don't know at that point. But what you do know is the person with the checkbook is saying, this is what we're going to back. So that's where you go, you know. And I mean, and I'm glad we did. I'm glad we got that second record out. I mean, I wish that, you know, I'll never forget, we were looking at tours, and the label was saying, nah, we're not going to put up the money for that tour. No, we're not going to put up the money for that tour. And that's where we all just kind of threw in the towel and said, we'll go home. You know.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it really is a shame because, I mean, Stereomud certainly was gaining some momentum, you know, certainly in those early years. I remember, I'm a big WWE fan. Obviously, I remember you guys did the theme music for Raven for the Forcible Entry soundtrack. I love that record. So it's it seemed like you guys were gaining some steam. It was such a shame to see the label, you know, kind of drop it like that. But from there, you managed to go on and do other things like Soundevice and Dangerous New Machine. I actually still have the Love Said No T-shirt from that night in St. Pete, by the way. Dangerous New Machine was yourself, Billy, Randy, and Rodney.
Right.
I really enjoyed that record, Set the World on Fire. It seemed like a really good comeback, and it was really exciting for me to hear your voice on a record again. And just so many great songs from that record. At the time when that band came around, were you at any point attempting to get the name Stereomud for a new lineup, or was that an issue at the time?
You know, over the years, people had asked, hey, you know, if you put a band together and call it Stereomud and just do the songs, you know, we will pay this. No, Stereomud was the five guys that were in Stereomud, and you know, D&M was a new project. It was a new record. It was different members. It was new songs, and you know, we didn't. You know, I mean, I was a part of that band. I was a part of the writing. I was a part of getting, you know, the Stereomud. But Dangerous New Machine was Billy and Randy and Rodney and I, and you know, it was on to the next step. I mean, for Stereomud, in order for Stereomud to work, it's got to have all five moving parts. You know, that was always my belief. It was how it was created, and it was how it should be relayed. For all of us, you know, there was talk about it, but nothing that I was ever really willing to pursue.
That's interesting, and that's a pretty admirable stance to take. I mean, anytime you've had a band that's had a little bit of success and that's been around for years, history is full of stories about how bands have had wars over name ownership. And,
oh, sure.
I mean, I could name a million examples. Queensryche.
There was two LA Guns touring for a while.
Yeah, and remember that whole debacle with Jeff Tate and Queensryche?
That to me, you're almost taking credit away from the original project, and you know, now sure, I had promoters with Dangerous New Machine that said featuring, you know, Billy Gray from Fozzy, you know, Erik Rogers from Stereomud. Well, sure, that's because I was a part of that. That was
nothing wrong with
my
that.
History.
Yeah,
and that's that's part of promo. I mean,
Sure.
that was given, and I had no issue with that.
And
know?
you guys had played a few Stereomud songs, obviously.
Sure. When we were writing the record, and we were like, you know what, we need to add a song to the set list, and Billy was like, man, I love Breathing. Let's play Breathing, or I love Pain. Let's play that, or sure, that's fine. That's doing a cover song, and we did it our way, but as soon as those songs of our own were written, that we didn't need those songs, we didn't play them anymore, And then we ended up doing, we were like, hey, we'll pick other covers, like Salt and Pepper's Push It.
Yeah, I remember that.
Turn those into, rock rap songs, which was just fun to do. And, but it was one of those things that, we wanted to go out on our own merit, and our own record. And it's kind of, you run it up the flagpole and you see who salutes. And,
definitely. Definitely a smart approach to take as far as that goes. And certainly on your first tour playing those Stereomud songs, because I'll be honest, that's what hooked me when I saw you guys in 2009 at the State Theater.
Right.
I told Billy about this story. My buddy's band was opening for you guys. So I went and saw them, and then once I realized who you were and what band you were in and heard some of the songs you were doing, I was right up front there singing along to it, and to my shock, you brought me on stage and we closed the set. It was one of those things I'll never forget as long as I live. And I remember.
I think that was also, wasn't that the first night that Randy played with the band?
Maybe I don't know, but I do remember hearing that you guys had some trouble with your van being towed, and you had to go get that, and which I.
Oh yeah, I got impounded that night with our gear in it.
Oh yeah, no, the State Theater is. That venue is notorious for having just the weirdest parking situation. I've had my car towed there a bunch of times, and it's just the parking situation there. I don't know how it is now, but certainly for a long time it was really strange. So it's a shame that had to happen to you guys.
Oh, it's all in rock and roll, man. You've got it's if it can happen, it will happen. If it can break, it's going to break. I mean, you're out on the road, and that's what makes it livable, is the shit that happens that just you end up laughing about later.
Right.
We got our equipment back on time. We were able to get the van back. We got on stage on time. We had a great show. We had fun, and that was the thing. It's like, what? No hiccup was going to stop it.
Right.
But those hiccups are going to happen. I mean, it happens to everybody in everyday life.
Of course,
I mean,
of course.
Ours just always seem to be, make for great stories down the road. I mean, but yeah, I remember that. I'm almost positive that was the first show that Randy played with the band, because we had a different bass player that quit the band, and which was kind of a mutual, I'm going to quit, and we were like, good, you can go. And when he did, and he had another gig. He was playing in a 311 cover band, and they were making really good money. And he's like, I can't pass up this money to go play for pennies to do original music. And we hired Randy, and Randy actually didn't even audition. He was Rodney's buddy, and he was a cover band bass player. And he was like, look, he can learn anything. He's amazingly talented. And I was like, so we're not even going to audition this guy or do anything. He's going to meet us in Florida and just play. And he walked on stage and he nailed it. And I looked at Billy afterwards and I said, we're not looking for another bass player now.
Well, there you go. That's cool. I thought Randy had played on the record, but I guess it was the other guy?
He did end up, yes, he did play on the record. We actually let him go back, and we had the record in the can. Yeah. And we went back and let Randy lay down the bass tracks on the record.
Gotcha.
We wanted him to have that piece of it. He played different styles. I mean, different bass players have, just little different inflections. And we really liked what Randy brought to the table. So we went back in and with the producer, Rusty Cobb, and said, hey, listen, we're going to bring it in. We're going to book 3 days, and he's going to come in and lay down all the bass tracks for the whole record. And they were on board, and it worked out great. So Randy is on the record.
Oh, there you go. There you go. I remember there were a few different bass hooks in there. I think it was either on like Better Days or Bulletproof Hero, where you had this one like. Oh,
that's What's Your Name.
What's Your Name? Yes. Great song.
Yeah.
So, this is really cool for me, just kind of reliving this whole night and everything. And here we are today in 2017, and I was lucky enough to get Billy on the show here. He let me know what you were doing, and all of a sudden we find out about My Therapy. And I know you were working for Harrah's, or what was it that you were doing for them?
I'm their front services manager at the hotel.
Okay.
And I ran a valet company in Atlanta, Georgia for years after, I wasn't touring full time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was getting to a point where it was consuming my life, and I was doing a lot of nightclubs, so it was a lot of working until 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning. It was in some shady parts of Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
Lucrative. I mean, it's a very lucrative business, and the opportunity to move up and take the job for Harrah's, and I already had a house up here that I bought back when I was in Stereomud, and I was like, well, I've got a home, it's paid for, it's in the mountains, I face a beautiful lake, I'm going to do it. I'm going to pull the trigger, and I'm going to go up there. And that's, and like I said, I did not come up here thinking, well, I'll end up forming another band, or
right.
I'll record any more music. I may do some stuff on the side here or there. And I met Adam, who's the drummer, but also, like I was saying, plays every other instrument under the sun. And we met a guitar player who happened to be a Stereomud Dangerous New Machine fan. And he said, hey, I've written these songs. Let me come audition. And he came over and was awesome and said, hey, I've got another buddy who can play. We'll get him out. And so we started writing songs. And then we got to the point where we had 5 or 6 songs down and said, well, we'll record them and we'll do an EP and see what happens. And now it's in the final stages. It's being mixed now. So we just finished the video we just released for My Therapy, which is also the name of the band and also the title track.
Right.
So, and it's just straight up. We're not reinventing the wheel. It's just rock and roll. We've actually got one song's got banjo in it.
Okay.
Got a piano track, an acoustic track, and then, just some straight up rock,
Yeah, and then you had the latest song, Goodbyes, which is more like a piano ballad, too, which was beautiful.
Thank you.
So it's definitely a little bit of diversity with this project here, but still sort of the same sound people have come to expect from you over the years.
Well, I think that has a lot to do with vocal tone.
Mm-hmm.
I sound like what I sound. I mean, it's if you hear Steven Tyler come on the radio, you're going to recognize it's an Aerosmith song, or
right.
know it's Steven Tyler. If you hear Disturbed come on the radio, you know it's Disturbed as soon as you hear Dave Draymond open his mouth. It's you've got those vocal tones, and I mean, I've got a style. It's just kind of rock. I try to be as melodic as possible,
mm-hmm.
articulate, and sing. Love to scream and be heavy too.
Right.
So we've got a lot of that in there, and that's just who I am. That's what I grew up listening to. I grew up listening to rock and playing rock and doing covers and the different bands that I've done. So that's how I think that's why it translates that way.
Absolutely. And as a singer myself, I've always really admired your tone as far as like having that, really distinct, a lot of guys try to go for affectations in their voice, or try to scream, or try to, do all these little tricks to make themselves heavy, but you really just belt it out there like that. And that's something I've always, being a guy in a band myself, that's always something I've tried to go after myself. And hearing it, especially in the new metal era, you get guys who have the tendency to rap and start, doing too much of the Cookie Monster stuff. You never really strayed too far into that, which I always admired. You always kept it relatively straight ahead, and I think there's something to be said for that.
No, and when Stereomud was recording our first record, one of the producers, and we had several producers on the record, he said, what if you rapped on this verse? And I said, I can't rap,
mm-hmm.
so I'm not going to be rapping on the verse because it's not going to be me.
Of course, and that was the height of Kid Rock and Limp Bizkit and even early Linkin Park and all that stuff.
That's exactly who the comparison was, and he actually produced Linkin Park's Hybrid Theory.
Yeah.
His name was Don Gilmore, and he's a phenomenal producer, and we had a great time working with him, but it was one of those things, we stuck to our guns and said, no, that's not me. It's not going to sound, it's not, I'm not going to be able to sell that. It's got to be real. You've got to be able to feel the emotion, hear the emotion. And I'm not a rapper. I mean, hence but yet later on you go on and I do we turn a Flow Rider song into a rock song.
Yeah,
and
hello.
I'm rapping, but it was still, it was me singing rap, or doing whatever, just kind of.
It was more tongue in cheek.
Yeah, I mean, It was, and it was fun, and they were fun songs to play live.
Yeah.
I mean, the reaction from the crowd when D&M was touring was always, was phenomenal, and smiles on their faces, and that was one thing. With Billy, we used to smile a lot on stage. We loved what we were doing, and it showed. And as we were smiling at the crowd was smiling back at us. And that was something that was, I'm honored, because Billy is such a talented guitar player, and loves to play. If you've ever seen him on stage,
oh yeah,
you can see. It's not fake. It's not an act.
Yeah, I mean, and you turn around, you never know where he's going to be. He's a little ball of energy, man. He runs all around all over the place.
Squirrel. We called him Squirrel. We actually had a little squirrel statue that rode in the front on the top of the dash on the van, and that was our little. It was Willie Grizzlefield, the squirrel.
Nice.
And he rode because that was Billy. He was a squirrel.
Nice.
And
it was a spirit animal.
And that's. And he'll always be that way. So.
There you go. So that's cool, man. I mean, it's really cool to hear that after all this time, you still have that desire in you. You still have that urge to get out there and do original music. Because a lot of guys, after a certain point, they just kind of lose it, and that always breaks my heart when I see that. And to see that you're still out there doing it and giving it another go is, I mean, it's awesome. I love seeing it, and I'm really excited to hear what My Therapy is going to be doing.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I think the part of that is like you kind of mentioned earlier is songwriters and life is always happening. There's always something to write a song about if you're just stop and pay attention. And if you're just listening. We've got tracks on here. I have a son who's now 25. He was little when I was in Stereomud. I remember him coming out of the road and riding the tour bus for his summer vacation, and he was 10 years old, and meeting Saliva and Seven Dust and Disturbed and Drowning Pool and all those guys, and he'd go back to school and they're like, "What'd you do for summer vacation?" "Went to Disney World." "What'd you do?" "I was on tour with Disturbed. I was riding the tour bus with my dad. I've got a Korn jacket from the festival with Korn," and they were like, "No, you don't." And I was like, "Yeah, I do." Actually, when he was in 5th grade, I went and did career day. And they had, one dad was a real estate agent.
Sure.
He had a fireman there, and all this. And then it was, "Hey, I'm a singer in a rock band." And we showed the Pain video, and I gave stickers out to all the kids in 5th grade, and all they wanted to know was raise their hands, like, "Have you ever met, NSYNC, or have you ever met so and so, or met these people?"
Well, have you?
No, we never ended up touring with any of those guys.
Right.
It's just, but it was funny because even some of the parents were like, "So that's what you do for a living? Like, you play music?" Even they wanted to ask.
Oh, I'm sure the dads must have had a million questions.
So it was. I mean, it was fun, and to have him part of that. And he's had his struggles in life and adulthood, and and different things, and it's all those things. Paying attention. Goodbye is an extension of a song that D&M wrote called "I Wish."
Yeah. I love that song.
That song was about my little sister, who passed away. This year is 11 years now, and "Goodbye" is just an extension of that "I Wish" song. It was kind of those, the guitar player who's playing with My Therapy lost his mother in November, so the song says, and then December would be my sister's birthday. So, there's those little kind of hints in there that make it personal, and so it's like I said, life is always happening. So there's always something there to write about if you're willing to, sit down and do it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Going back to "I Wish," even what we were talking about at the beginning of the conversation, like, I had no idea that's what song was about. I had assumed it was like a breakup or something, but it's one of my favorite songs from that record.
Thank you. Yeah. No, it's one of those. It was written for interpretation, but it was, that was written for my little sister, and just wishing she committed suicide,
Oh man,
and
I'm sorry to hear that.
wishing that I could have been there to help. And I don't know if you have the album, but on the inside of the album I have a picture of my sister and I, and that was actually the last photograph I had with her. The last time I saw her, because when she passed, I was on tour, and so she had come out to a show, and I saw her, and months later she was gone, and it was one of those things that's how I express those things, that by writing them into song, and what makes that healing process so possible is people like yourself who listen to the song and connect to it, and it may not be even close to what the song was about for me or the band when we're writing it, but hearing that connection and that story, because it may be something that creates healing in you in a situation you have, so that in and of itself helps my own personal healing.
Well, that's good. I mean, I'm incredibly sorry for your loss. I mean, that's a horrible thing to have to go through. Things like that. One of the things I always took away from that song is, now I have to live with something I regret. Wish I could go back. I would have never left. Like, that's something that I think everyone can relate to at one point in their lives.
Yep.
Looking back at stuff that they wish they had done differently, or wish, a lot of people like to say, "Oh, I have no regrets, this and that," and it's good if you feel that way, but that's not always true, and it's okay to have regrets sometimes. But I think learning from that, and taking that and learning from it makes you, that's part of growing as a person and part of making yourself a better person. So, I think there are pros and cons to that, of course. So I do have that CD lying somewhere around. I'll have to go and see if I can look and check out the liner notes for that, because I'll definitely listen to that differently from now on, but in a good way.
Right.
So and it's interesting that that's the name of your band now, My Therapy, and how music can be therapeutic like that.
And that's actually how the name came about. With Dangerous New Machine and Stereomud, we rehearsed. It was not uncommon to rehearse every day, if not 5-6 days a week. And with My Therapy, it was more of, we're all older now. We all have children. We have wives. We have 9 to 5 day life going on. And it's, you don't have the freedom to just kind of chuck it all away and go do what you want to do, because I tell people all the time, I'm in a management position and I have young people working for me, and I tell them it's not easy to adult. Adulting is very tough. To say no to spending money on something because you've got to pay the electric bill, or to do different things. I say, it's not easy to adult, and for us, it started as our poker night. The difference was you had a guy with a guitar in his hand and a bass in his hand and drumsticks beating on him, and me screaming into a microphone, and that was our poker night.
Absolutely.
And we started joking around, and we had written the song My Therapy, and I was like, that's exactly what this is. This is our therapy. Everybody gets, I've had a horrible week at work. We get together on the weekend. We're going to jam. We're going to write some songs, and we're like, let's just call it what it is. Call a spade a spade. It's my therapy.
Absolutely. And that's like, I've had conversations with my dad about that sort of thing. Like, he loves to play golf on the weekends. I'm like, Dad, this is what I like to do outside of work. I mean, is be in bands and play music. So it's, it's cool to see that still happens, and that you guys are still doing it. Have you ever talked to the people from Harrah's about maybe getting up on one of the stages there and doing something at the casino?
Oh, they've asked. It's funny, when I interviewed for the job and I got done with all the corporate business questions, my director, who's my boss, my direct report, said, "Tell me something about you that has nothing to do with the interview, nothing to do with your work history, your job experience, or any of that." And I said, "I'm a musician." And he's like, "Oh, what do you do? What do you do? Do you play an instrument? Do you sing?" And I said, "No, I'm a singer." And he's like, "Have you ever done anything I might have heard of or anything?" I said, "I don't know if you followed rock music or didn't." I said, "I was in a rock band. We were signed to Columbia Records, toured around, with Disturbed and this band and that band." And he's like, "Are you serious?" I So he said, Erik Rogers, and I could tell that he was plinking something on a computer, and he pulls up, and I hear Pain start playing in the background.
Aha, there you go.
And he's like, "This is you?" I was like, "Yeah, this is me." He's like, "What the, really?" So he was a guitar player. He plays blues. You know, he's like, "We're gonna have to jam when you come up here. You got the job."
Was he?
And I was like, "Really?"
Was he familiar with
After 20 questions of corporate America, what seals the deal is that I was a singer. And I was like, "Who would have thought it?"
You'd be surprised nowadays. Was he familiar with the Stereomud stuff, or?
He was not familiar with it until his oldest son was familiar with it.
Oh, there you
and
go.
He said, "Dad, I knew that band." So he's a little bit older than I am, so it was not his era.
Right.
You know, if I'd have been an '80s hair metal band, then yeah, he would have known it. But,
Gotcha.
But it was still it was just kind of funny. I was like, well, I mean, I guess the only thing I could tell you about me that has nothing to do with, you know, running a hotel and valet service and bell service and hospitality industry is this is what I did for a living for a long time. You know, there's my gap in my job history.
There you go.
Although I worked all those years, it was just not your atypical job.
Of course. Yeah. There you go. That's great. Because I was even going to ask, like, even before my therapy happened, working at Harrah's. I mean, I'm sure you have cover bands playing there all the time. I don't know if you ever got.
Oh yeah. They've got a lot of they have a lot of music come through there. I mean, our resort has. I mean, we've got Willie Nelson coming up and Alabama, and we just had we got Three Doors Down coming.
Yeah.
Aaron Lewis was just there. I mean, there's a little bit of everything comes through. Of course, being in Western North Carolina in the mountains, we get a lot of country music.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
But it's still we get a lot of. I mean, we get a lot of artists up here, and there's still a lot of rock that comes through here too. You know, so.
Are you anywhere near Asheville, North Carolina?
I'm about an hour and a half away from Asheville, but I would be, if you were looking at North Carolina, I'm west. So I'm in western North Carolina, closer to Tennessee.
Okay. Very cool.
So I've got a place on a lake called Lake Chattooga.
Very nice. I'm sure it's just gorgeous country out there.
Love it up here. Love it. My father's side, I was born up here. My father's side of the family's from up here, so coming back, you know, my dad and mom have retired up here years ago now, but so I'm close to my parents, which is nice. They're getting older, so
sure.
To be here to help, you know, when they need it, maybe give back a little bit, you know, for all they put up with in my youth.
Absolutely, absolutely. And
so
has you said your son is in his 20s now? Has he kind of gotten the bug a little bit? Does he play at all?
He does. He plays guitar and sings.
Okay.
But he struggled with drug addiction for the last 9 years, and currently is residing in a 5x6 cell and getting his shit together. I hope.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I hope this is. It's okay. You know, it's we all go through. I mean, it's, you know, drug addiction is running so rampant and killing so many, you know, so many kids are ODing and it's you know, pills and whatnot. You know, when I was in high school, you smoked weed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you smoked some weed. You might go buy a 12-pack because you knew one kid that was 21 years old that would buy you, you know, a 12-pack of Pabst Blue Ribbon or Milwaukee's Best, and you drank it, and you know, but I don't remember. And of course, you know, getting in a band and seeing it, you know, you saw a lot more drug addiction. Drugs were never my thing, you know.
I was going to ask if that was anything that you struggled with during your career.
No, never. You know, and not that I think it makes me any better than anybody.
Sure, no, of
I
course.
had my own vices, you know.
Yeah.
I love to drink, and love the ladies. So, you know, I had my vices, but drugs were never it. I've never done cocaine or heroin or any drugs like that. Was never a pill popper, and you know, and knew plenty of people that, you know, that did. And it doesn't make you a bad person. Bad choices don't make you a bad person.
Right.
You know, but it's those things that I hope and pray for my son every day.
Sure.
That the loss of freedom that he's dealing with right now, and will hopefully gain his freedom back next year, that when he comes out, he will have found that it will be better to walk a different path.
Yeah.
Than what he chose. He didn't learn it from me. He didn't learn it from his mom. I don't think drug addiction doesn't have a type, doesn't have a race, doesn't have a sex. It just it gets you, and he's and he's doing well. I mean, I talked to him. He's doing well. He's as best as you can be in the situation that he's in, and I sent him the lyrics. My therapy, we actually wrote a song called Demons that I wrote about him and his struggle, and just trying to understand,
Sure.
When you're going through that, because what a lot of people don't realize is it's not just the addict that's going through hell.
It's their family
and loved ones, and the struggle and trying to understand, and what you do, all the reading you do and research you do to try to understand so that you can better communicate and try to help that loved one or that friend that's going through it, and it's one of those things that I hate it for him. I think every parent, any parent of any child, wishes that their life will be easier and have fewer struggles than they had on their own growing up. I think we all do. We want to save our children from those bad, making those mistakes that we made growing up. Oh, no, don't do that. I did that. That didn't work. Try this. And no matter what, inevitably, your child is going to walk their path. And all you can do is be there to pick them up and dust them off, and no matter what, I don't care. I mean, he's 25 now, and he's an adult, but he's still my little boy.
Of course.
So, and that'll never change. I mean, I'm in my 40s, and my dad just turned 82, and I'm still his little boy. And when I go hang out with him, I still feel like I'm 13 and getting told what I need to do or not need to do.
Right.
So
I mean, I just became a father myself. I have a 3-month-old little girl, so it's
congratulations.
Stuff like that really hits home to me, and thank you for that. So I'm hoping, obviously, hoping that everything turns out all right with her when she's 25 or when she's 45. I'm still going to look at her that same way, I'm sure. So
you will. You will. You
Absolutely.
Already see it, even at 3 months. It's you're already. Your thoughts. I mean, I'm sure just like every other parent that sits down to watch the news to see what's happening in the world and just all the things that are going on and going, I've got to protect, I've got to shield, I've got to save, no matter what, you'll lay your life down, for a loved one, and especially your children.
Absolutely. Very cool. Well, yeah, it sounds like a lot of things are going on in the world of my therapy. Definitely a lot of hidden meanings to that name and the song and everything. I'm not sure what came first, the song or the band name, but either way, it sounds good. Yeah, it's kind of like Black Sabbath and Iron Maiden. They kind of have similar situation.
Right.
So it works out. But you guys are getting your EP mix done now. Any upcoming shows in the works that you can talk about yet?
We've got, and I'll find out actually tomorrow. We've got one in Alabama coming up at the end of October, and it's more of a acoustic storytellers we're doing. There's a radio station there that's already picked up my therapy.
Nice.
And are playing it, so they want us to come and do kind of a storytellers acoustic set in the studio. So we're gonna slide over there and do that, and we're looking at something here locally where we are. Obviously, I've been up here. I've been living here a little over 2 years now. I've got a lot of friends here. A lot of people are like, man, I want to see. I've watched all your videos on YouTube. I want to see. I want to see the band play. So we'll probably do something here, maybe even at Harris, and who knows from there. It's kind of a.
Well, plus Harris has a lot of other locations around the country, like Atlantic City.
They do. They've got a lot, 42 in the United States. So there's a lot of places for us to play.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things. There's no set plan right now. It's one of those things. Like I said, we're just kind of taking it as it happens. We were blessed to have Dustin Blake, who shot our video. And actually how that kind of came about was an interview I did with a guy named Scott Bowling for Good Company. He's got a show called Good Company.
Mm-hmm.
and he reached out to me and wanted to do an interview, and from there we met Dustin, and Scott got involved, and it was just kind of grew from there. And it's like all these things, they just kind of happen. So we're not trying to force anything. We're just taking it one day at a time.
Very cool. It's a smart way to do it, and you're not obviously you still got your day job and everything. You're not necessarily putting it all on the line, but it sounds like you're working a lot smarter on this one. And not that you weren't working smart before, but it's definitely a good approach as far as taking it one day at a time and seeing what happens. And definitely wish you guys all the luck in the world.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And please let me know if you guys ever make it down to Orlando, which is where I live now.
I will, for sure.
I'd love to come and see you, maybe show you my band, see what we've been up to, and all that stuff. So
absolutely.
For sure, man. Erik, this has been great. Where can people find yourself and My Therapy online?
On Facebook. We've got the Facebook page. We don't have the website or anything launched. So right now it's just My Therapy Band on Facebook, and obviously through my page or what, and of course the Dangerous New Machine page and everything going on. We just utilize social media to stay in touch with everybody, to keep everybody up on what's going on, and pushing it that way. And then once we get the CD out, we'll start looking at expanding that online exposure.
Sounds good. I believe it's facebook.com/mytherapymusic.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, I will definitely put a link up to that, sort of in the description here, and let people know where to find you and where to hear your new stuff. But this has just been such a pleasure for me. I feel like a lot of this is coming full circle again. If I could tell my 17-year-old self that I'd be doing this in 2017, talking to you like that, I don't know if I would have believed it, but here we are. So this is
that's awesome, man.
So this is
well,
really
I appreciate
exciting.
It. I really do, brother. Thank you.
Absolutely, and continued success for you. And thanks for taking the time.
Absolutely, anytime, my friend.
Thank you once again to Erik Rogers. Just a great guy, great interview. It's pretty remarkable how he and I have kind of intersected over the years, just as a fan and as an artist, and how his music has influenced me, and I've gotten to kind of get to know him through the podcast, through just going to his shows. It's pretty cool, and despite all the obstacles and all the speed bumps, the fact that he's still going after it and still really has the music in him is really inspirational. I mean, if there's any way I could describe this guy, he's a survivor. This guy's persistent. And I'm really excited to hear more from this new band, My Therapy. I'm really rooting for him because he's a great singer. He just sticks to it, and I really hope all the best for him and for My Therapy because he's great. There's nothing more I can say about that. Hopefully, he and I will get to share the stage again one day. You never know. But I definitely want to thank Erik for giving me a call. As far as upcoming events, this Thursday, October 19th, I will be at Bombshells Tavern in Orlando. I'll just be doing like a 3 or 4 acoustic set. I'll just be doing a 3 or 4 hour acoustic set, mainly covers. I mean, if enough people get in there who know me, then maybe I'll throw in a few originals, but it'll probably be your standard cover acoustic set. I'm hoping this turns into sort of a semi-regular thing. There, we'll see. I always enjoy doing that sort of thing, and it's a good way to get yourself out there to practice and make a little extra money. So, and hopefully those of you in the Orlando area will be able to come out. On Saturday, October 21st, we will be part of Biketoberfest in Daytona Beach, which usually happens every October, obviously, but it happens throughout the month. There are all kinds of events in Daytona. Obviously, they're known for their biker community. We will be part of a small festival called Motor Mayhem, which is going to be at Strokers in Edgewater, which is, as I understand, is just right outside Daytona. It's presented by Hot Diva Enterprises, and we will be there along with bands like Shallow Side, Apollo Electric, A Fine Line, and our good friends Breathing Theory. So that should be a really exciting night, and the band and I, we don't have too many other shows for the rest of the calendar year booked at this point. I know we're focused on finishing our record, writing some new songs. So I don't know when the next show besides that is going to be. But hopefully soon, hopefully within the next few months. But if you're in Daytona, then we would definitely love to see you there. And finally, on Saturday, February 10th, which is a few months away. I am actually going to be doing a solo acoustic show at Winfields in Satellite Beach, which is just outside of Melbourne. I will be there with not only with some great friends of mine like Justin Weir of 21 to Burn and Dominic St. Charles of Earn, but that show will be headlined by the one and only John Corabi, who many people know as the former lead singer of Motley Crue, and he was also the guitar player for Rat for many years. He's currently in a band called the Dead Daisies, and a legendary vocalist and musician. Should be an honor to open up for John Corabi, and that would be a great guest on the podcast, by the way, if I could get him. Hint, hint. But yeah, this will be a really thrill for me. I always loved the record that John Corabi did with Motley Crue, so no doubt he'll be playing a lot of those songs live in an acoustic setting, really intimate atmosphere. So definitely check out our events page for that. And that is it for this episode of the Phoenix Report. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at JackXConnor. Like me on Facebook at facebook.com/JackConnorMusic. Feel free to check out my band, Vertebreaker, on Facebook at facebook.com/VertebreakerBand. I'll have links in the description in case you're not sure how to spell it. And if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, make sure you either leave a comment here or email me at jackconnorpodcast@gmail.com, or you can always tweet me at JackXConnor with the hashtag Phoenix Report. Any suggestions, questions, things you want me to talk about, I'm all ears, people. I really want to hear from you guys. If you're listening to this on YouTube or iTunes, make sure you subscribe, leave a comment, like I said, and go back and listen to all the other episodes. If you're here for the first time, go back and listen to the Billy Gray episode, because Billy Gray and Erik Rogers, they certainly have a history together, and Billy Gray's doing a lot of great things. And we cover a lot of different things between music, movie reviews, pro wrestling, basically whatever's on my mind at this point. So I'm having a lot of fun. I hope you guys are enjoying listening. Thank you for tuning in. This has been the Phoenix Report. I am Jack Connor. I will see you guys later. Bye.